This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Hello, world, and welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. Today's sponsor is A2 Hosting. I've been using A2 Hosting solid-state hosting solutions for our website at geekleader.com for many, many years now, and absolutely love their support, their service, and all the features that you get. You get access to cPanel. You get all of the things that you can imagine for a great WordPress experience, including their A2 optimized WordPress, which does extra security checks, extra lockdown. You can lock down your editor file so you can't edit anything inside there. You get alerts whenever there are file changes that are done. You can also do automatic updates, backups, and more with A2 Hosting. So highly recommend it. Go to geekleader.com/A2 to get more information and to sign up for their solid-state, turbocharged speed hosting today. Again, that's at geekleader.com/A2. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Beau Button on the show. He's the president and CTO at Atlas Reality, which is redefining some of the location-based games and AR development. So we're going to talk a little bit about gaming, monetization, entertainment, metaverse, and where things are going in the future and the importance of this when it comes to just general society. I think it's going to be a fun conversation. Beau, welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about how you got to where you are today in your career and what your background's like.
Yeah, no, I got a really early start in software and computers. I started dealing with hardware, dabbling with hardware around 8. That kind of transitioned into software probably around the age of 11, and it's just been nonstop since then. I've spent most of my professional career in the enterprise software space, building custom software for small to mid-sized businesses, and then the last 6 years I've been in the mobile video game development space.
Awesome. I'd say your background probably is pretty similar to mine. I can think back when I was a kid, my neighbor worked at a company called NCR, and he used to bring home like computer components, and we would build like 8086s and 286s and things like that. And that's how I got my, I guess, desire for technology and kind of got wrapped into it.
Yeah, when you say NCR, are you talking about the National Cash Register sales?
I sure am, yeah.
That's funny. It's a small world. I didn't have any experience, but my neighbor, who kind of got me into the hardware side because of his dad's career, his family was very well connected to that business. Very small world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. But that's how I got my passion for technology and computers. We build a game or build a computer and then play a game on it and just have fun. So tell me a little bit about what got you interested in the mobile world.
Oh, I'll be blunt. I absolutely despise mobile devices, mobile software development. From like a productivity and complexity perspective, it's kind of the bane of my existence, but there's no denying that it is the future. Everybody has a smartphone in their pocket. But what got me into the mobile space was, quite frankly, there were a lot of people asking for mobile apps. This predates Atlas Reality. For a while, I owned and operated a consultancy, and pretty much everybody and their grandma was like, "Hey, can you do mobile development?" And that at the time meant like native mobile apps for iOS and Android. Nowadays, when someone says mobile, it could mean like a mobile responsive website. But yeah, that's what kind of got me in the space was the demand. I just couldn't shake these people asking for mobile apps, and then what got me into games was my business partner saw me. He had always aspired to own and operate his own game studio, and he knew that I was kind of in the space building software for other people. And he reached out and, asked if I wanted to go, in together and create a mobile game development company. And initially I said no. I think I said hell no. After a little persuasion and the fact that he had some pretty big clients lined up, we ended up creating a business called Cerberus Interactive. And that was the name of the company that is now Atlas Reality.
Cool. So when you get into building games, do you guys do that for yourself and like put your own games out there, or do you do it for other people, or a little bit of both?
So when we started, we were actually on the latter of that. So we were building games for other people. My partner saw me. His background is in user acquisition, marketing, sales, and he had kind of built out this sales funnel and was getting in front of some very big companies that were looking for custom game development. So we started off with that being our primary business. And then I think about a year and a half into that, we both realized that despite games being fun, and people think that building games is fun, but building games for other people is murder. So we pivoted and decided to start working on our own IP and our own titles, and that's what we're doing today. We do not do any kind of third-party development.
Awesome. Yeah. So I built my first mobile game, probably, it was actually a long time ago. It was in 2010. And I remember it very clearly because my daughter was born October 13th, and that was the day that Apple accepted my first app into the App Store. And for me, it was always just about a hobby because I had gotten a job as a manager of a web development team, and our CIO came to me and told me that we're going to start doing mobile apps, so I needed to learn that. So I just started tinkering on the side and made some pretty dumb games, but there were things that just got me interested in learning about the mobile development. And that space has been, extremely fascinating and has changed so much over the years when it comes to the things that you can do on a phone, from that you couldn't do before. I mean, the compute power and the hardware is just incredible compared to where it was.
Yeah, no doubt. It's scary, to be honest with you. And every generation of mobile device or phone that we have access to, it doubles or triples. So it's not like this slow roll. We're gradually increasing GPU throughput, CPU memory, etc. It's the changes we're seeing are drastic between generations of hardware, which is good and bad. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, I absolutely despise mobile development, primarily because of the ecosystems, like how Apple does one thing, or they have their own way and they have their own kind of walled garden, and Google does things completely different. So it's more so a disdain for the tools and the process. But no, you're absolutely right. These mobile phones that we're using today, and the libraries and the game engines that we have access to, it really is incredible.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you 100%. And that's why I pivoted really quickly from doing native development to trying to use tools. I remember when Cordova first came out, it was a phone gap, and then in Cordova, to try to build something that I could put in both environments, because it's so difficult to, I'm going to do this. And, back then it was Objective-C and then Swift, and then I got to turn around and do it in Java, or the languages were continually changing, and it just got frustrating.
What's sad is that same experience that you dealt with when PhoneGap and Cordova were kind of in their infancy, those two technologies have kind of gone away. You can still build apps with, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but they're kind of frowned upon. But
right.
We still struggle with the same exact problems. We're talking, you probably, let's say call it 2012. We're 2023. And as a developer, if you want to build a cross-platform mobile application, you're still dealing with those same exact complexities. It's quite honestly, it's a nightmare. Again, it's not because it can't be done. It's because you've got an Apple company, you've got a Google company, and they're really not cooperating. But it is what it is. You can't really deal. I don't see a way forward other than just dealing with the complexities. But we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that you guys have kind of pioneered and kind of gotten into is the AR development. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that's important to you guys?
Yeah. So when you say AR, most people associate augmented reality with this idea that you're holding up a device that has a forward-facing camera, and what you're doing is anchoring some type of augmented, like it could be a 3D model, it could be a dinosaur. You're anchoring it onto a surface that actually exists in the real world. And the way that occurs, or the way that the software works, is magic. Both Android and iOS have their own SDKs or software development kits for that. But we kind of steered clear of that traditional, holding your phone up and seeing these things superimposed on that world, AR approach. And when we talk AR, since we're a location-based gaming company, which means you're using standard maps, you have to walk around in the real world to play our games. What we consider AR is the augmentation of the map. It's not what most people associate AR with. I've seen some really incredible AR experiences, but the fact is, even with some of the larger games out there like Niantic's Pokemon Go, you achieve some level of, it's not achieve, forgive me, you experience some level of fatigue holding your arm up. So that's what we consider AR. So although we say AR, it's really just we basically superimpose things on a map, a real world map, that aren't there in reality.
Yeah, Yeah, I think that's so cool because it's teaching. I have kids, so I'm interested in what my kids are doing. But I definitely want to make sure that they're learning about the real world in some way, and not everything is non-existent. I know they're big into like Roblox and Minecraft and things like
Oh, I have 3 kids as well. My 2 youngest are road. It's actually impressive how they collaborate. One's like the interior designer, and one's kind of like the exterior designer. But we haven't quite cracked that nut. So like, I absolutely agree.
that.
Having a real world experience that we could technically leverage to educate. Right now, we're not doing a great job as a company of leveraging the fact that you are on a map that is a real map, and we could technically use that to educate you about geography, statistics, like anything that is, spatially, relevant. It is something that we want to do. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you are seeing a real map. You might learn some streets. You might know where certain businesses are versus playing, some type of fictitious map. But there's a lot that we need to do in order to actually connect the education aspect of it.
So, what are some of the things that you guys are doing when it comes to, the games and how that's, um, mm, just explaining some of the development technologies and challenges that you guys are going through when it comes to creating these games using real world places and we already mentioned a little bit about cross platform issues, but what are some of the other things that come into play that are challenging when doing something like this?
Uh, I've been in the space for so long, and everybody, like, they want to know what are our technical obstacles. Quite honestly, everything that we do, there's always some type of obstacle. It's either a third party that doesn't want to cooperate with another third party, like we used to call this DLL hell, or dependency hell, where you've got so many third party dependencies, and they don't know about each other, but when you try to bring them all into a single project, they just don't cooperate. I'd say from a tech perspective, that's kind of what we run into most frequently, but we can always work through those. It's a pain, it's a nuisance, but we always are able to get through them. To be quite frank, the hardest part is really not so much on the tech side, like with access to the internet and Google and Stack Exchange and all of these websites where everybody can go and ask questions and collaborate on responding. We rarely run into situations that we can't kind of unblock or correct ourselves. For the tech that is very complicated, we generally rely on enterprise or paid support. So if we can't fix it ourselves, we reach out, we submit a ticket, and we get support. But for me personally, it's building the team. It's getting a group of people that have similar interest, similar like kind of appreciations for the environment that we're in. We're all work from home now. That was another big curveball. When we were all in the office, it was pretty easy to manage. But yeah, I think the most challenging thing is, quite honestly, aligning everybody's interest and getting everybody working towards a common goal. Hiring those people, training those people, and then ultimately, showing them what it is that the business needs to be working on, why we need to be working on it, and how it kind of impacts revenue, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. And so when you talk about building that team, what are some of the things that you do on a practical sense? Because I'm all about getting practical, especially things that can help me as a leader and manager practically with my team. So what are some things that you do to kind of build that team, that teamwork and that cohesion and that communication that's obviously crucial when you're building some kind of a new app?
Yeah, this is not going to be popular opinion. So I'm a very blunt, outrageous, like just direct person. I also have a tendency to curse a lot. I don't know honestly why people call me the sailor. My dad was an ex, military person, but I just grew up in a house where we could just speak our mind. I'm very thankful for that. But when it comes to hiring, if you look at how some of the big players in this space, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, etc., approach it, I think I understand why they start off that way. You want to have really rigid, complicated questions. You want to talk about algorithms and all of these, high-level academic concepts. The fact is I went to college for 2 years. I had already had 6 years of experience, and I dropped out after 2 years. So, when I'm hiring, I don't have a bunch of questions that I need to ask. I don't have a bunch of challenges or coding questions. I'm very blunt. I'm very transparent. And I'm not afraid to just speak my mind. And some people are receptive to that, some people aren't. But I feel like that icebreaker, when I get on there and just ask somebody, what is it you love doing? How would you approach this? Do you think that you would enjoy working on these types of projects? I can cut through like 99% of the crap and just get things done, like in that 20, 30-minute interview. Again, it's not the norm. I have a lot of friends that have worked at, the likes of Apple, Facebook, and like, oh, we had 7-round interviews. I had 6 people on the lab. I'm just like, holy hell, we're a 30-person company. And generally, if I'm hiring, I'm the only person you're talking to. Again, just brutal honesty. I don't have anything to hide. I don't want you to hide anything. And I want you to admit that you're ignorant. And I will admit when I'm ignorant. Just don't be ashamed of saying I don't know rather than making something up. That is the biggest red flag for me. Again, I've been around the block, been doing this for, what am I, 30 now? Oh my God, that's scary. Almost 30 years. So, I've got an intuition and my gut instinct is tuned. But yeah, I mean, that's just be very direct, let people know what it is that you're working on, how we approach building software and what we're looking for, and, figure it out through the first interview.
Yeah, I think directness and transparency is extremely important. And it's one of those skills that, people get too political. They get too, I mean, political, not like in the governmental sense, but at work.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
These work politics that you want to, kind of toy with and play around with. And nothing drives me more crazy than to have a conversation with one person and they come off one way, and then you go to a different setting with that same individual and they're a completely different person. It's like, come on, man, what are you?
No. That's one of the beauties. I mean, I wouldn't have this luxury if I wasn't a co-founder and one of the original founding members of this company. I think if I was an employee, I would feel a little less inclined to just behave. I'm not saying I behave maliciously or inappropriately. It's just like, I need to know things. And I agree wholeheartedly. I'm the same way in person as I am. I've had to learn a little bit more about how to read people through Zoom. When I was in person, I could kind of get a sense of the energy in the room. But when that kind of went away pre-pandemic, when that all started, I was like, oh man, I'm not as good about reading people when I'm not next to them. So I've had to hone my skills for the last 3 years on trying to like dial that in. But yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah, but I agree with you. And I think it's one of those things like, you mentioned you wouldn't have this opportunity if you weren't a co-founder of the company. I think other leaders can get there, but it's one of those things you have to build that social capital first. You can't just come out and just, be completely direct.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. But
if someone hired me, yeah, if they hired me as a hiring engineering manager and then witnessed one of my interviews, I'd probably be canned the same day. It's just, it's not how they're used to seeing things. But the fact is, we've grown this company from our original 3 founders. Like I said, today we have 30 members. I think all in all, we've hired between 40 to 50 people. Some have organically left the company. Some have had to be terminated. And the process has worked. We've got a really, highly productive team. And I think a lot of that has to do with how transparent we all are and how direct I am. And quite honestly, like in the tech space, people have interviewed extremely well, but performed poorly. So I don't really front load it. And I'm just like, I'm not overly concerned about what it is that you know today. I'm trying to gauge how do you learn? Are you one of those people that are just have like an insatiable appetite to resolve something? I'd rather somebody who doesn't know, but is inquisitive and knows how to use the internet and can learn relatively quickly than having somebody that's got 10 years of experience and, is just kind of awkward to work with.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think for me, it's I want to know how you learn. I want to know how you communicate. And those 2 things are probably the most important. And then third, I want to see what you've done. What's your history like? Like, if you're going to be a cloud architect or something like that, have you played around with it, even if you don't have experience in it? Like, have you gone out and done stuff on the side just to learn and hone your skill? Have you taken courses? Have you taught people? What have you done? Have you volunteered somewhere where you got to be able to build an app for someone? I've hired people that didn't have any experience at all, except for they said, you know what, I don't have any real experience. I want to get in development. So I went ahead and built a website for my landscaper because he didn't have one. And I built, a database and a website that could take donations for the Red Cross at my local chapter or something like that, just to show that you're interested,
No, that to me, if you're a software engineer, the folks that I'm looking for are the ones that are moonlighting, that are after hours, either doing something directly in software engineering or tangential. So if it's a 9 to 5 and you've only ever programmed at work and you've learned how to program at college, that doesn't really indicate passion to me. I think it's commitment. You've gone through 4, maybe 6 years of school, you've got a good job. But like, if after hours you're not really continuing that, then I don't know. It's again, it's a red flag. We have some folks on our team that are like that, but they're very academic. They might have a background in math, so that's a good person to have on the team when you're doing pathfinding. If you're self-taught, maybe you don't know how to implement A star or some of these higher level, kind of pathfinding algorithms. But I really love people who are also passionate about software engineering or technology outside of their professional life. Those are the people that it's nonstop. So they've done a lot and they continue to do a lot. So like you said, like I'm okay with somebody who doesn't have professional experience with a specific tool as long as they've at least dabbled with it. That's important to me.
Well, like they have their own portfolio of things that they've done, even if your day job is you're a help desk technician, but on the side you've built a couple of apps that are in the app store that they're not making any money, but hey, it shows that you understand the process and you learned that on
Absolutely.
your own. So when it comes to we've gotten how you interview and how you find and how you hire people, how do you keep them excited about what you're doing?
Oof, that's a challenge. It's how do I keep myself?
How do you keep the good talent, from getting burned out and bored?
I don't have a solid answer to that, but I can tell you what I do and what my partner and I try to do as the two co-founders is we get out of their way. I've worked for people, I've worked with people that micromanage and like to put their hand in every pot. And in some instances, if you're in a highly regulated space, that is necessary. You have to just maintain, quality, etc. But like when you're working with very skilled, passionate people, if you've hired right, you don't need to micromanage. And obviously I keep saying this, work from home, like the dynamic has changed so much in the last 3 years. It's a trust thing. You have to trust more now than ever because people aren't in front of you. They're not in the same setting. They're not in the same building. But yeah, I honestly, it's just get out of their way. We synchronize when we need to synchronize and we kind of align what our priorities are. And if they have questions, by all means, we're accessible 24/7, 365 as managers and founders. But I think that really does yield a happier employee. Obviously, compensation, making sure that you've got the right benefits and, not being super stingy about tools. Like, you could do it the hard way, but if there's a tool that can help you do a job faster, by all means, allocate some of your budget for those types of tools. And if you're not aware of them, trust that the developer's, recommending something that's going to increase his throughput and not just say, oh, you could just do it the old school way. Again, I've worked with a fair share, a different mix of people who, we have a really tight budget. I can't afford this $29 tool. And it's like, oh, for the love of mankind, like that can save us, so many hours. But yeah, honestly, I think the best thing to do is to just not micromanage and just trust and kind of base, your trust off of deliverables. You'll know pretty quickly if someone's not working because in our world, we work in an agile environment where basically every 2 weeks there's a deliverable. And if you're not delivering something, then clearly you're not developing.
Yep, absolutely. And I love what you said about, trusting your developers to get the tools. And that was one thing I learned early on in my management career. I was, getting a little frustrated with, not being able to do something. And I went to my boss and I was like, look, I want to get this tool, but it's like $250. And he's like, you spent more money talking to me about this tool than you would have if you just sought it.
Yeah.
It's like,
whatever their hourly rate is times. Yeah, exactly. It's sad. And look, the reality nowadays is a lot of these tools have moved away from upfront, like, I remember when Adobe Photoshop, that's the only tool right now that really stands out. I remember like the Creative Suite was like $2,700. Now you can subscribe for $49 a month, but some of these tools are also free. Like Microsoft has several IDEs, integrated development environments. They have VS Code, which is 100% free, and they have a free version of Visual Studio. So like you really don't need to spend too much money, but yeah, there are tools out there that could really increase throughput, and we're not talking thousands of dollars. Very rarely do I see software that are software that's more than a couple $100 or $20, $30 a month, like as a SaaS model.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think getting out of your developer's way, getting out of people's way, I think is extremely important. And, I learned that also the hard way because I was trying to micromanage, early on, because I always thought like, oh, my name's on the line. I've got to make sure that everything's good. And I remember I had a mentor because I had two people quit in the same day. And, obviously I was making excuses about why they quit. He came to me and was like, no, they quit because, you're a bad boss. You don't scale. If everything has to go through you, it can't scale. It's a non-scalable solution, and you're holding everything back and everyone on your team back. And I was like, oh my God, you're right.
Yeah, technical scale is one thing. It's a bit more objective, but scaling at the human level, and it is a challenge. But I will say it goes hand in hand. The more trust and the more kind of productivity, kind of based like measurement, like we're measuring based on what you're producing. And let's say we work 40 hours a week, some people have like, we're all working from our living rooms, and our schedules are relatively flexible now, but like if you're an expert level engineer and you get your work done, like I'm okay with that. Like that's kind of like one of the perks. But yeah, getting out of their way has been proven to be very, very productive.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about some of the products that you guys have created, and I'm very interested in Atlas Earth. So tell me a little bit about it, and what is virtual land, and how does that work?
Yes, that is the topic. So we started off actually, our first location-based game was called Atlas Empires, and it was largely inspired by Clash of Clans and Pokemon Go. You've got the location-based aspect of Pokemon Go. You're walking around, interacting with these augmented maps, and then you've got the Clash of Clans experience where it's a strategy game. You're building your, fort or whatever the hell you want to call it. And that was what we started off. But about 2 years into that game's existence, we started to very closely monitor what was going on in the Web3 space. So for those who aren't familiar, blockchain, cryptocurrency, non-fungible tokens, all of this. And we were, our investors were asking us like, oh, what do you think? Why don't you do a game that's blockchain based? And when we started looking at the games that were in that space, there were virtual real estate platforms. This is really riding on the NFT sales kind of hype where people were buying gorillas and this and that. And, the virtual real estate kind of phase was NFT driven. And I loved that idea. I love the idea of virtual real estate. Like, well, in an NFT world or Web3 world, it's speculative. Like I don't know what the utility of a NFT is that says I own, 50 by 50 pixels in some obscure man-made map. Like I don't know what the future value of that's going to be. But Sami and I were like, well, look, we've got this tech that we've built for these location-based games. It's using real maps. Let's build a real estate game that lets you walk around and buy parcels of land. But we consciously made the decision to not introduce the complexities and the friction that Web3 brings. Onboarding users into blockchain-based games is a nightmare. It's pretty challenging just with regular games. So adding a crypto wallet, trying to explain, what custodial versus, like, it's just a nightmare. So Atlas Earth was something that we built because we were closely monitoring what the Web3 space was doing and, what the attraction was to owning virtual real estate. And Sami's background was in fintech. So what ultimately came of those conversations were like, well, what is the value of virtual real estate? In the Web3 space, I still can't answer that. In our world, it's basically a placeholder. This is not an investment platform. There are no guarantees. This is not FDIC insured. I'd love for it to be, but long story short, what we are doing is in essence selling the virtual land, and the minute it's sold to the player, we become your tenant, we as an Atlas Reality. And as a tenant, we are obliged to pay rent. We call it virtual rent, and that rent accrues at a very, very, very small amount per second. And this is the psychological loop. You get a free piece of land. Everybody who installs Atlas Earth gets one piece of free land. It's, I believe the dimensions are roughly 30 feet by 30 feet. And that land is one of 4 rarities. So this is a common game mechanic. You've got your common, your rare, your epic, your legendary. And based on its rarity, it generates a certain amount of virtual rent per second. And that rent obviously has to come from somewhere, but we're a for-profit business, so it's pretty straightforward for people to connect the dots. If we're selling you a piece of land for $5, we're letting you watch ads, we're being paid for you to watch ads. We're also partnered with about a dozen nationwide brands, Burger King, Jamba Juice, Popeye's Fried Chicken, etc. So the rent is coming from our revenue here. And yeah, I mean, there's things that you can do in the game, again, that can boost your virtual rent. And if you, and we have a lot of people, to date we've cashed out. So we have about $350,000 that have left our ecosystem to players who have cashed out. There's a minimum of $5. So you have to literally have enough land, boost your rent by watching ads to a point where you can get to $5. But that's kind of the core game loop. But that doesn't really answer what is virtual real estate. You don't own the land. It's a tough one. I can't talk transparently about it because it's not an investment. It's not a legal investment instrument. I wish we could. I wish it was something that we could talk transparently about. But yeah, for now, ultimately, we pay you in cash. The land generates, our in-game currency is called Atlas Bucks. So you spend Atlas Bucks to buy the virtual land. And what we do is we allow you to accrue virtual rent that can then be converted into cash.
Cool. So where do you see the future of like metaverse and things like this going?
I'll be honest with you. I still struggle, and most people do, like, what is the metaverse? I'm not a fan of the term. Yeah, we use it to some degree because it's relatable and it's easy. You know, certain audiences respond well to the metaverse because they're just intrigued. Like, oh, what is this new? You know, is it Ready Player One where I'm going to put on a headset and teleport to a new world? For me, it's just the evolution of the internet. And I would rather, instead of calling it the metaverse, it's like the 3D version of the internet. So we went through desktop, and then we went through this mobile/responsive phase, and then of course we had augmented reality, virtual reality. I don't think those are really mature enough. And my opinion is although they are closely tied to the future of the internet, the 3D internet, they're not a requirement. I don't see a future where you have to put on a headset or you have to hold up your phone to participate. So the future of the internet, aka the metaverse, for me is something that is 3D. These are interactive experiences. So you might go to your favorite merchant's website and they may have a traditional HTML-based, browser-based experience where you're just reading text in 2D. And then maybe they have an interactive experience, which is closer to what people are calling the metaverse today, where maybe it's multiplayer or multi-user. You can walk around a virtual shopping center, or let's say it's Chipotle, I think, had a virtual game where you could make your own burrito. I don't know why you would do that, but long story short, it's less about trying to pigeonhole us into like, oh, it's just this 3D space. I think it's just a new way to basically present content to players or to users and consumers. For us, again, it's what I would like us to become is a legitimate fintech company. I'm very passionate about, financial literacy and, allowing people to save, and Sami as well, because, before founding this company, he worked at a company called Acorns, which is a micro investment. They do some really clever stuff with roundups. Like every time you spend, let's say 99 cents, we'll take that 1 penny and put it into a brokerage account and invest it for you. Obviously, a penny's not going to make you rich, but the crux of it is trying to build a platform that is fun, but also actually helps people. And that's where we are today. But we are a gaming company because of the law, basically. But yeah, I mean, that's where I see us going, is building out more experiences in Atlas Earth that allow our players to earn more passive income. In regards to what people or other people are calling the metaverse, I think it's just like I said, it's the 3-dimensional evolution of the internet.
I think that's a very good description of it, the 3-dimensional evolution of the internet, because people equate a lot of times the metaverse with Oculus or something like that, or Quest, but then you get into no, because there's other metaverses out there too. Like my kids play Roblox, so that's a metaverse that they're in. They're doing whatever.
To be honest, if anything should be called a metaverse, it should be Roblox. They are the most successful. They have the largest number of players. I think the issue is there. And just to take one step back, obviously the internet is based on open standards. There's RFCs for every technology that powers it, every protocol. There's consortiums that openly discuss, and these are staffed by people from every corporation in the world. It's not, and obviously sometimes they lean heavy, to persuade the committee to do something that benefits them as a company. But I'm a firm believer that the future of the internet, this 3-dimensional evolution of the internet, is going to be based on open standards. And that's where the likes of Facebook or Meta with Horizons and Roblox, like, they're closed ecosystems, and you have to kind of go through their, entry point in order to make money. And I in my personal opinion, I think it's very unfair. The rev share that they provide to their creators is just disproportionate. So I that's kind of like my only negative thing on Roblox, is like, I wish it was an open thing. I wish they'd standardize and kind of be a little bit more transparent about how things work. But right now, I don't know how many $1 billion they make, probably a day. So it's like, why would they?
Yeah, agreed. And no, I agree 100%. I think having something that is more transparent is, especially when it comes to rev share with your developers, to be extremely important, and would probably encourage more developers to participate.
Well, that's where my brain is. It's like, yes, it sounds counterintuitive, but if you're making, off of user-generated content, somebody creates a brilliant game in Roblox. They have hundreds of thousands of users, but they wouldn't have been able to build that game without your platform. Maybe it was, and quite honestly, a lot of the creators on Roblox, they've learned how to build games because of Roblox Studio, which is in essence an IDE/game engine in itself, but it's extremely intuitive. The barrier to entry is very low. The tool itself is free, but I don't know what the current rev share is, but for Apple and Google, they take 30% off the top. That's, in comparison to some of these other platforms, it actually sounds fair. I don't recall what it was with Epic and Fortnite, but like, it was something gross. Like, as a creator, you would get 6%, and I'm like, holy hell! So that is 94% going back to the company. I'm like, it's greed. And this is something else that Sami and I share. I'm very thankful for this. Is, if you're making that much money, yeah, I get it. You're a for-profit company. You have shareholders. Everybody wants to make or quadruple or whatever the hell, multiply whatever their investment was, but that's just not something that I want to participate in. I want to build a business, and even right now, we're being very frugal because we have to make sure that we continue to be viable, but we're going to start dialing these things in as we continue to grow the business and give more back to the players. Like, Sami and I are genuinely committed to allowing players to earn a useful passive income. Right now, $5 a month is not useful. I mean, to some people, it could very well be useful, but, it's not overly useful.
Right. Yeah, it would be to my kids, but not to me.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, nowadays, Starbucks is $12. It's like, goodness.
Yeah. So, so when you're thinking about like how to make this more of a fintech type company and moving in that direction, what is next?
So for us, I think we've nailed the primary market. What I mean by that is we've launched in the United States. We've proven that there is a demand, or there is demand, for virtual real estate. We've sold over 4 million parcels of land.
Wow.
Which is insane. And the next, we're not really inventing a whole lot. Technologically, we have some innovations and inventions, but like, we're inspired by reality. Like, well, what does the real estate market look like? Well, you buy something, maybe it's a vacant lot. Well, what do? You improve it. You add a structure, okay? Then what do you do after that? Well, you sell it to somebody else who wants to buy the structure and the land. So what we're thinking through now and starting to actually ideate and create is that secondary market and the ability for players to build. So you bought a piece of land. Why would anybody else want to buy it? Like, what is the utility in it? Well, location, obviously, in real life is important. If you're gas station is at the entrance to the rental car return facility, you're going to probably get a lot of clients. But there's really not a whole lot of that. So that's what we're working on now, is the secondary market where players could auction their properties. But before we can actually open up the secondary market, we have to allow players to build on their land. So that's kind of where we're going. And we are still navigating the legalities of what it would look like in a future where we are regulated by the SEC. Let's say what we are doing is considered a legal, investment. Whatever. Again, a lot of what we're doing is inspired by what we've seen happen in the crypto space. Are things securities? Are things not securities? And there's still a lot of questions around that. So we're just a game until then, and we may forever continue to just be a game. But behind the scenes, we really do want people to earn money, and I think the most logical way to do that would be at some point, if legally feasible, is to treat this as an actual, financial platform.
Awesome. I think it's really cool, and I think it's cool what you guys are doing, and I appreciate you coming on the show. How can people connect with you online and learn more about Atlas and even connect with you?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. If you're a Web3 fan and you love Web3, if you're a maximalist, I don't suggest you follow me on LinkedIn. I talk a lot about Web3 and what that kind of cohort of people missed out on. But yeah, LinkedIn's the easiest. It's just Beau Button, BeauButton. And then if you're interested in Atlas Earth, the best place to go is just atlasearth.com. Same thing with Atlas Reality and Atlas Empires. You just go to all three of those websites and you can learn more about it. Or if you want to install the game, the shortest path is just go to the App Store or Google Play and type in Atlas Earth.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And I'll link all that up in the show notes as well so people can connect that way if that's easier at geekleader.com. Beau, really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you, sir.
If you enjoyed that episode, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. I'd greatly appreciate that. And also don't forget to check out merch. We have some t-shirts that I've designed that are on at geekleader.com. You can click on the merchandise section there and check that out. And also don't forget about the books from our guests. So if you like this guest and other guests that have written books, please go ahead and check that out at geekleader.com. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too.